week I'm altering a pattern that I've made before. I'll put a little link up so that you can find where we made this dress. It's adorable. I love it. I've worn it all summer. But I want to do this look and this style in a top, so I'm going to shorten it. That's the first alteration. I'm making it in a smaller size, which fortunately I have in here, so I don't have to do anything as far as sizing goes. But I need a 3/4 or long sleeve without a cuff that's going to be cut in a knit. And the sleeve in this has a dart in the cap up here because it's meant to be all woven, and you need that when you're doing a more fitted with a raglan. I'm going to be combining a woven for the body and a knit for the sleeve and the neck casing, and I'll probably change the neck casing. It's sort of thick, and I think I'm going to go with a much thinner little neck casing, but I like the where it hits. So all of that's great. I almost sat down and designed a pattern. I almost made a pattern to do this very thing, and then I started thinking about it, and I thought, well, I'll just pull this out and I can use this for the body, and I'll just make a sleeve. And then I realized this has a great long sleeve, so I'm going to alter out the dart. So I'm going to show you how we're going to move out the dart, slim back up the sleeve a little bit, because it is going to be cut out of a knit. So we're going to go to the pattern table and work on that now. Traced off my pattern. I've gone ahead and shortened it just a little bit at the bottom. I've taken off about 2.5 inches down here, traced my side off, transferred my important markings. This is my dart point, the end of my dart, and I put a piece of tape over it. And now I'm going to draw down through that dart all the way to the bottom. And we just want a straight line, really. That's what matters most. Whoops. I say that and then I move my ruler. It's important to have a line cross this cutting line. So now we're going to take our scissors and we're going to cut down. Now this is the dart where it would have been cut out right here. And I'm just going to cut up to my little dart point, but not through it, on each end. And we're going to move that dart fullness into the hem. Now we don't need that fullness in this hem, so we're going to end up having to remove it, but we want to keep our pattern flat. And so in order to do this, this is the way it has to go. So I'm going to now, you can see I have a hinge and I can start swinging out this dart. Now if I go all the way, like this, so I've got the whole dart swung out, you see it swings all the way out here. It's so big. And I mean, if you want a bell sleeve, you've got it. That's great, but I don't. What I want is a raglan sleeve with a slightly larger neckline than it started out, because this was for a woven. And then I need to take all this fullness back out, and I'll show you how we're going to do that. But first I'm going to tape this down. Got my dart closed up. Now I've got my 5/8 inch markings here, so I can move 5/8 on top of 5/8 and can get that completely rounded out. But I want to actually increase this neckline just a tiny bit, because I'm going from a woven to a knit, and I want to be able to pull this over the head. So I'm actually going to just true up this neckline. So this is my new neckline, right along here, and that only added less than 1/2 inch total in that neck right there, but it's very important because it'll help give enough room to go over the head. And now I'm going to do another slice, and what this cut's going to do is help me to swing this back down this way. Okay, so I'm going to cut through this direction, and I've got this line here I could have used, but I really want to go into this point where this meets this, and I'm going to mark my 5/8 inch so I know where it is. I might have to redraw my line. 5/8 inch this way. So right here I have a little cross. Okay, so here is my 5/8 inch down and my 5/8 inch over, this little point, and I'm going to now draw a straight line through it, and I'm going to cut up to this point, this direction, and this point, so that I can pivot. So now we're going to put tape. We'll put some tape on that little spot, and I'm going to draw a nice straight line right through it this way. And I'm going to cut up to my pivot point on both directions. Alright, so now that I've done that, what happens is I can pivot out all of that and straighten my sleeve back up. So what I've done is I've moved this dart fullness, ends up coming to the center of the sleeve, more like right in there. So it's full at the shoulder, which is where we need it. We need fullness at the shoulder without, and it's a knit, so we don't have to worry about the dart part. So I'm not taping yet because I'm going to go ahead and do this other side first so I can kind of adjust them. And now I've marked this side, so I'm going to do the same thing up to my little point, but not through it. And what happens is, see if I can set those down quietly. All right, so now when I'm hinging this back in, you can kind of see, it reminds me of the starfish when I do this, but it's moved this dart fullness sort of into the center of the sleeve. And if you're looking at the arm, it's like the shoulder and the top of the bicep. That's where all that fullness went, which is actually a good place for it to be. So I've moved all of that out, and now I can pin down or tape down these, straighten this out down here at my little hem, and I have a new sleeve. Now before I cut this out in my final fabric, I'm actually going to go ahead and cut it out in this tissue and see if I like the fit, because I can always bring this in a little bit if I think this is too big. This is for my little mama, and I don't want it to be a giant uncomfortable sleeve, but I also know we're making this accessible, so if it's fuller, it's a little easier for her to get on and pull over. It's just an easier thing to work with. So I'm going to pin this together and cut it out. And let me show you what I did for the rest of the pattern. Let me tape this down real quick. When you're doing this, you just want to make sure that everything lays flat. You don't want any puckers. If you have puckers, that means something's not quite right. So I need to fill this in with pattern paper, but this part's done. Did some measuring and tweaking, and I went ahead and did another little pivot point right up here at the neckline, and I pivoted in to get rid of a little bit of this fullness that's right here, and brought that in. And then here's my new hemline, and I measured everything out, and so now I'm much happier with my sleeve. So I've done a pivot point here, and a pivot point here, and a pivot point here, and a pivot point here. Anyway, it's all pivoted a lot. I added a tiny bit in the neckline for fullness to get it over the head, and now I'm just going to trace this off. I'm happy with this, and instead of having a pattern piece that's all tapes and little bits of paper, I'm just going to trace it again and have one completed pattern piece that I really like. Make sure you transfer your front and back notches and any other important markings so that it's easy for you when you go to sew. Everything will line back up. All right, ready to trace it off, and we will have a new pattern. So here's my pattern back. That I've started working on. Started tracing off the back, and this is very straightforward. There's nothing much changing on this. Again, I'm using this part, the bodice. The main part of the bodice is going to be woven, the sleeves will be knit, and the neckline will be knit. So I'm leaving this part the same, the front and the back pretty much identical. The only difference is the back of this dress, which is now a tunic, had a seam down the center back, and I'm not going to do that seam. So there's two options. You can move this over 5/8 and trace it off, or you can leave it in and then you have enlarged the back of the neck. Now, I have left it in because I knew that was an alteration I was going to have to make anyway. I was going to need to enlarge the back of the neck just a little bit for fitting purposes, for posture. So if you have somebody who is bent forward, stoops, anything like that, sometimes you need a more width across the back of the shoulder and the neckline, which I did. So instead, I just left in that extra seam allowance. Because I'm going to be attaching this to a knit ribbing, it's going to pull in that neckline anyway, so I'd rather the neckline to be just a little bit larger. It has to fit over the head. So this is it. I've marked my pocket placements, and I've already done my front, so I've marked where my front ends. I'm actually lengthening the back. And for doing a hem on something like this, I'm just gonna pull this out so it's even, there we go. If you want to keep the hemline shape, so this one has a shirt tail hem, the best thing to do is to mark one spot where you like it. Like I know I want it this length at the back. See how much different it is because I'm shortening. So on the front, it was a 10-inch difference from the center front where I wanted it to the bottom. And then I just measured up 10 inches, 10 inches, 10 inches, and that was it. But I knew I also wanted to lengthen a little bit at the side, so then I went back and did some adjusting. So this is my new side length. Let's measure it for the back. And I'm just going to keep this, I like this shirt tail hem for this, so I am taking off 8 1/4 inches. So I'm going to follow along my 8 1/4, and this will help me keep this shirt tail hem. It'll keep the same exact shape of my hemline, and I'll just follow this all the way around. And that'll be it. Super easy. And I have shortened this. It's longer in the back than in the front, which is what I want because, again, if you have that posture where you have somebody who's bent forward a little bit, or even just the way a person's shaped, like if you're fuller in the back than in the front, I'm going to just connect this so you can see. That's my new hemline. So now I have a new back, and I actually have all my pieces ready to go. I've got my front done, my back done, and my sleeve. So now I'm ready to cut out my 2 fabrics and start sewing it together. Let me show you the front. The front on this one has a dart, and I left that in because this is the wovens. So here's my original pattern. Here's my new traced pattern, so that when these go together at the side seam, and again there's a dart in the way, but when that dart's pinched out, you can see these line up. I'm looking through my pattern paper, but they line up just right. And I have my little markings. She does want a pocket, and if possible, I don't want to do a patch pocket, so I'm going to try and fit a little side pocket in here for her cell phone and her tissues or whatever, just to make life a little easier. But if I find that it's not pulling right, if it's hanging poorly, I will go ahead and try and do a hidden pocket by lining up my fabrics if I have enough fabric to make it hidden. The other thing you could do, so these are my fabrics. This is the woven that's going to be the main body, and this is the sleeve. And this is the original pattern, so it's going to be about that length with the longer 3/4 sleeve. But here's my little conceptual drawing that I was showing my mom. You could easily do, out of this knit, the pocket that looks like the front of a sweatshirt, you know, the little band that comes across. It's not as flattering if you don't want anything on your tummy that's an opposing color, but it can also be really cute and sporty looking. So that's another option if you're doing some of this little pattern shifting and mixing your fabrications. You could definitely do that. I know she's not going to want that, but I could do that maybe for myself or for somebody else. That could be really cute. You could even do it in the same fabric if you are pretty good at matching up your patterns, and it would sort of just disappear in there, which would be a practical pattern or a practical pocket for somebody like my mom who needs to put her phone and her tissues in it and walk with a cane or a walker or something like that. If you're doing accessibility, that's a great place to put it. If you're doing something like this for somebody in a wheelchair, you're going to even want to do shorter in the front than in the back as a rule because of the legs. Like when you're sitting, it shortens the torso as a rule. And your pocket placement would need to be different because the pocket is usually down in the hip. When you're sitting, that changes everything. So you need to think about those things when you're doing clothing for somebody that's needing some accessibility help. All right, we're going to cut out